I just finished binging Victoria Beckham's new documentary on Netflix last night, which reminded me of her not so understated, as she calls it, WAG era, a period of her style evolution when she was known for carrying some of the most jaw-dropping Hermes bags so big that she could probably fit herself and entire entourage into one. But I thought it would be fun for us to take a walk down memory lane and look at some of her most noteworthy Hermes bags, because there is no doubt about the fact that Victoria Beckham owns one of the most iconic Hermes bag collections out there, which is rumored to consist of over 100 Birkin and Kelly bags, from timeless neutrals all the way to the ultra rare exotics. Of course, I share with you everything you need to know about each and every single piece, from the style through the leather all the way to the true price of each one. Not the inflated resale price, but the true price of how much each one of these bags would cost you if you got one directly from the store today, as long as you can still get your hands on them, because some of her pieces are truly rare. But if you thought that her love affair with Hermes came to an end when she started her own fashion line, you would be mistaken, because she continues to really quietly add new pieces to her already extensive Hermes collection, and they are some of the most unique Hermes bags out there. If you'd like to find out what these pieces are and how can you get your hands on one, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. Obviously today, the smaller the Hermes bag, the more valuable it is. But believe it or not, that wasn't always the case, because these smaller styles like the Birkin 25 and the Mini Kelly only launched decades after their ancestors' success. So the main sizes that the Birkin was available in originally were size 30, 35 and 40, but mainly 35 and 40 were the most sought after sizes, because these bags were designed as a daily hold-all pieces that you can genuinely use as a workhorse bag and will stand the test of time. These bags were designed as your daily companion, and most people would have found it ridiculous to spend so much money on an itty-bitty tiny bag, not only because they were not in style, but also because most people wanted a lot of bang for their buck. So they thought that the bigger the bag, the more I'm actually getting for my money. And I'm pretty sure that Victoria Beckham would have said the same. She would have said that the bigger and louder the bag, the better, because she was very often seen carrying these gigantic Hermes bags in size 35 and even 40, even though she's quite petite and she could have really easily been swallowed by one of these bags, but she made most of them work somehow. So let's start with a huge bag, and then we'll move on to some of the smaller contemporary bags that she's been seen carrying in the recent past. But let's start with this gigantic white Birkin bag, which is in Clemence in the color Blanc, which Blanc was an extremely popular and also exclusive color in the early 2000s. Hermes very rarely does pure white at this point. They did bring this color back called New White, so it was a new take on this shade, but the original pure white Blanc color has not been in production for, I want to say, at least a decade. Even though it is an extremely sought after color, it tends to sell really well on the pre-loved market, especially in Asia. I believe in Asia, resellers gave this particular color the nickname Snow White because it is pure paper white. In the past, this color was not only available in Clemence, as you can see it here, but also in Togo and Epsom. But Hermes reserved this color for larger, more slouchy, relaxed bags. So things like the Birkin Return and also the Kelly Return. Victoria's bag is with palladium hardware, which is again quite rare. More often than not, you'll find Blanc bags with gold hardware, which tends to make these bags look a little bit warmer and a little bit more sophisticated. So the fact that hers is with palladium hardware makes it look a little bit more fresh and a little bit more casual. And then an interesting detail that you'll notice is that it features a leather wrapped lock, which is usually a detail that's exclusively reserved for exotic bags. So if you buy a bag in ostrich or one of the different types of crocs or alligator, you'll notice that the lock on those bags is also wrapped in leather, but the same goes for white bags. So pure white bags, and again, only pure white bags, will also come with a leather wrapped lock detail. With that, let's move on to the Hermes bag that I more often than not think of when I think of Victoria Beckham, which is this eye-catching, shocking pink large Birkin 35 in ostrich in the color fuchsia. Yes, this color is actually called fuchsia, that she wore to a press event after they moved to LA with her husband, and she wore this incredibly beautiful body-hugging Roland Mouret dress, which I think is such an iconic picture and such an iconic look for her that I always go back to. Now, this bag is definitely not for the faint of heart. It is a large in-your-face Birkin bag in ostrich, which ostrich is technically an exotic bag, but it's not one that comes with sides, meaning that you do not have to carry any documents with you when traveling with this bag that confirm that your bag was ethically sourced. So the leather that the bag is made of was ethically sourced and it wasn't made of an endangered species, which makes it a lot easier. And it is a lot more hard wearing than any other exotic leathers from Hermes, and also it does not have an exotic stamp. So while technically it is an exotic leather, it doesn't come with some of the barriers or some of the things that make buying exotics quite finicky. Ostrich leather tends to age really gracefully. It's not something that you have to be overly careful with. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that it will become a little bit more shiny over time. But ostrich is a really nice leather. It is quite light, so even if you go for a larger bag, it's not going to be overwhelming. And because you do not have to shield it with your life, going for a larger bag is not as much of an issue as it would be when it comes to a bag made of alligator or croc that you do have to be a lot more careful with. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of ostrich in larger bags. I do like a little bit of ostrich infused into my collection because it does add a really unique texture to an outfit. But personally, to me, it is just a little bit too much ostrich. But in case you're interested, the last time I saw an ostrich bag, I really have not seen a Birkin 35 in ostrich in quite a while. The biggest ostrich bag I can think of seeing was probably a Birkin 30 in ostrich, which was just around 20,000 euros. So it is going to be significantly more expensive than a bag made of regular leather, but not nearly as much as the same bag would be if it was made of croc or alligator, because you'd probably have to pay at least twice as much for those creations. And while we are on the topic of Birkin 35s, it would be fair to assume that it is one of Victoria's favorite sizes because she has a huge collection of Birkins in this particular size. So she's been seen carrying a Birkin 35 in black Clemence with gold hardware, which is of course an iconic timeless combination, even though personally I do prefer Togo over Clemence. The biggest difference is the size of the grains, the malleability of the leather. So Clemence is a lot more malleable, a lot softer, which means that bags made of Clemence will be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more unstructured. They will definitely start losing their shape a lot faster compared to a Togo bag, and it is also slightly more shiny than Togo is. Yes, Togo does become more and more shiny over time, but not nearly as glossy as Clemence. And then she also has quite a few gold Birkins in size 35 with contrast stitching. She also has a box Birkin in this size, again with gold hardware, but in the iconic heritage leather of box. And these bags at this point are just around $14,000, I think a little over $14,000. Of course, it again depends on the leather that you pick it up in, but a Togo Birkin 35, I think at this point would set you back just a little over $14,000, and then box would be slightly more expensive. And then she also has the iconic Himalaya bag in size 35. Now, Himalaya doesn't actually refer to the style of the bag. It is purely a color and a finish, which Hermes offers in a plethora of different styles. But she has a Birkin 35 in Himalaya, which Himalaya is actually named after the snow-covered peaks of the Himalaya mountains, and that is because of the way these bags are dyed. So they have this beautiful ombre effect where they go from slight gray all the way to white. That is the traditional white Himalaya, and then Hermes also does a couple of other takes on Himalaya. So they also have a gray Himalaya where it goes from a dark gray to a much lighter gray. Something to keep in mind is that a white Himalaya will oxidize and it will gradually become more and more yellow, and that's really not something you can do anything about other than shielding your bag and making sure that you're not exposing it to all the elements, including sunlight. But that is just the name of the game when it comes to the Himalaya bag, and also bags offered in ombre lizard. That's another bag style and color that is notorious for yellowing over time. But she has a beautiful Birkin 35 in the Himalaya finish. She also has, when it comes to more spectacular, more jaw-dropping creations, she also has a smaller Birkin, so a Birkin 30 in Lycée Croc with diamond encrusted white gold hardware. But my personal favorite bag of hers is this one, which she was seen carrying just a couple of years ago, and it is a Birkin Cellier in a larger size. I would have assumed that it was in size 35, but I don't know if they ever produced this particular bag in alligator in size 35. So just being logical about it, my educated guess is that it is actually a Birkin 30 in matte alligator. You can tell that it is alligator by the exotic stamp, which is a little square by the Hermes emblem, and it is in the Cellier structure, which Birkin Celliers are slowly being discontinued. It's something that we talked about in a recent Hermes vlog of mine. So if it's something that you are dying to get your hands on, I would try to do it sooner rather than later. I don't actually think that you are still able to put in wishes or requests for this particular style, but of course you can still find them on the pre-loved market, and they are unbelievably rare in larger sizes. You'll more often than not find these in size 20 and 25. So the fact that she has one in alligator in matte black in a larger size makes it unbelievably special. And I think this particular bag would set you back just around $59,000. Now, my favorite exotic leather is alligator because I love how pronounced each and every single scale is. It is not the most aesthetically pleasing leather that Hermes offers. Most people will prefer something like a Perosus Croc, which features scales that are a lot more symmetrical and a lot more even, and the distribution is a lot more elegant. Personally, I love matte alligator because you really get those pronounced, beautifully enhanced scales, and this bag to me is a true show-stopping statement piece without it being overly obnoxious and loud. You know what I'm just realizing? It's quite interesting that Victoria hasn't done her own take on a tote bag similar to a Birkin, even though it is a style that has been unbelievably popular. Of course, the Row was one of the very first brands that succeeded with offering an alternative to the Birkin, even though this style is not unique to Hermes at this point. But I find it quite interesting that her line doesn't have a comparable tote bag. Now, I have owned several pieces from the Victoria Beckham line, and I actually am a big fan. I don't think that the quality is as good as it gets, but I really appreciate her more minimal, understated, modern approach to luxury staples. Her bags, however, I am not convinced by, but I would love to see what she comes up with, especially considering that she really knows these bags inside and out. Perhaps she hasn't done one because she doesn't feel like that she could surpass what the Birkin offers. I would be interested to know why she hasn't done a similar tote bag. I know that the Victoria Beckham line has had tote bags, but nothing that would have been comparable to this shape, this style, and this approach to luxury. Just an interesting point here. But before we look at more of her contemporary bags, I wanted to quickly jump back in time and look at some other special creations. So she also has a shoulder Birkin from the original Jean-Paul Gaultier era, which is the first iteration of the shoulder Birkin. We are currently on the third iteration of the shoulder Birkin. The one that she's carrying here is the original shoulder Birkin, which you can tell by looking at the hardware. You can tell that the hardware is closer to the hardware that you'll find on the HAC than the hardware you're used to seeing on a Birkin or a Kelly, because the twist closure is slightly more robust. And instead of the sangles sitting on a shelf, they have their very own cage. And this, I would guess, is in the color a tube in size 42, which you'll probably know that the shoulder Birkin was revived. Was it last year that Hermes brought it back in two new sizes with a more refined, delicate feminine hardware, but this is the original Jean-Paul Gaultier shoulder Birkin. And it's quite interesting because the first time I remember seeing Victoria Beckham with a Birkin, with a traditional Birkin in either size 35 or 40, she actually had it on her shoulder, which I don't think most people would be able to do because the handles are quite short on both of those bags. But of course, if you're a little bit more petite, it is a style that you can put on your shoulder. And she managed to do it, and it looked beautifully relaxed and casual on her. I just loved how effortless it looked. But she does, of course, have one of the original shoulder Birkins. And then I'm trying to think what else. Let me see what other pictures I have here. She also has a couple of Kelly pochettes. There is one picture of her carrying a black Kelly pochette in Epsom, which you can no longer buy at Hermes. Not only because Kelly pochettes are virtually impossible to get your hands on at this point, and if you'd like to find out why that is, I will make sure to have a video linked up here for you where we discuss the lore of the Kelly pochette and why they are so unbelievably hard to get, but also because the Kelly pochette is no longer offered in Epsom. If you wanted to get a Kelly pochette in Epsom, you would have to order it as an a la carte creation. And then she also has another unbelievably rare Kelly pochette in her collection, which is actually in Verdobli, so in suede in the color violet, which is one of the few shades that Dobli is available in. And speaking of Dobli, just earlier this year, she was seen carrying a smaller Birkin 25 in Dobli in the color black. And she was not carrying just one special Hermes bag, but two. She also had a Kelly long with her in the color gold, which is a bag that I have an unboxing / review video on, which I can make sure again to have linked up here for you. Not my favorite style from Hermes. It's something that I had the chance to buy and play around with. Not my favorite, even though it's a really special creation. I have not been able to get as much use out of it as I thought I would. And then let me see. I think these were all the archival bags that I wanted to share with you. And then moving on to some more contemporary bags. She was also seen carrying a Kelly on Disorder in box leather in Paris recently, which would set you back 16,600 euros in this particular leather. It is slightly less expensive in Epsom. The Kelly Disorder is inspired by a vintage mini Kelly that's no longer in production, and what makes this particular take on this vintage creation quite special is that it features not one but two Kelly twist closures on each side. The reason I am not the biggest fan of these bags, I would love to hear what Victoria thinks about these because of the way she styled this. The reason I don't find them the most user-friendly creations is because you have a Kelly twist closure on each side. It leads me to believe that if you had this under your shoulder, you would always have a Kelly twist closure digging into your ribs, which I can't imagine being very comfortable. And there's really no other way of carrying or styling this bag because it comes with a single longer handle. I wouldn't call it a strap, but it's not a handle either. It's more of, yeah, it's really just a shoulder bag, which I don't particularly love, but it is something that is still very much around. And as you can see, you can find it in box leather, which will make it slightly more expensive. And then she has also been seen with a mini Kelly in gold on gold, which the current price of a mini Kelly in the US is $10,500. $500 in Epsom. But if you wanted to get this bag on the secondary market, you'd probably be looking at spending somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000, because as we discussed at the beginning of this video, the smaller the bag, the more valuable it is today. And before I let you go, I wanted to quickly touch on the fact that this obsession with Hermes seems to run in the family, because Victoria isn't the only one that's been seen carrying an Hermes bag. David, it seems, also has a little bit of an obsession with Hermes bags. Two bags that I wanted to point out to you here is the Kelly Voyage, which is one of the largest stakes on a Kelly bag, is something that he carried in Paris earlier this year in the color Taupe in size 50. And then he was also seen carrying the HAC Ado backpack with the So Black hardware in the larger size, so in size GM, and then their son has that very same bag in the PM size, which is a bag I've talked about before. I do think that David styled it beautifully and it looked great on him. Personally, it's not something that I would invest my money in, because I don't like the fact that it comes with a single strap. Even though it is a backpack, you can only really wear it crossbody, because instead of having two straps like most backpacks do, this one only comes with a single strap. And when it comes to the Kelly Voyage, yes, it is an extremely elegant, beautifully refined travel bag, but it only really suits you if you're quite tall and you can pull off the proportions, and if you fly private and all you do is walk from your hotel to your car, because these bags are so unbelievably heavy. You'd not want to be lugging them around all day, but it definitely suits the Beckham family's style and aesthetic. But this actually brings us to the end of today's video, combing through Victoria Beckham's incredible Hermes bag collection. I really hope you enjoyed it and you got some, at least, entertainment out of it, and maybe even some education if you are considering adding any one of these bags to your collection, or if you just like to know more about them. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about these pieces. Do you have a favorite Hermes bag? Have you seen Victoria Beckham's documentary? What did you think? I would love to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And I will see you back here with a new video really, really soon.